First, let's define the word literature. The word literature is derived from the Latin term which means letter. It has been defined differently by various writers. Literature deals with ideas, thoughts, and emotions of man. Literature can be said to be the story of man, man's loves, griefs, thoughts, dreams, and aspiration, coached in beautiful language in literature. Philippine literature is a diverse and rich group of works that has evolved side by side with the country's history. Literature had started with fables and legends made by the ancient Filipinos long before the arrival of Spanish influence. The main themes of Philippine literature focus on the country's pre-colonial cultural traditions and the socio-political histories of its colonial and contemporary traditions. Why we need to study Philippine literature? We can enumerate many reasons for studying literature. Here are but a few. We study literature so that we can better appreciate our literary heritage. We cannot appreciate something that we do not understand. Through a study of our literature, we can trace the rich heritage of ideas handed down to us from our forefathers. Then we can understand ourselves better and take pride in being a Filipino. As Filipinos who truly love and take pride in our own culture, we have to manifest our deep concern for our own literature of our country. Wanna have a tour in Philippines? Come and join us.
Region 1 Ilocos Region was first inhabited by original Negritos before they were pushed by successive waves of Malay, Austronesian immigrants that penetrated the Noricos. Stingbans in the interior, Ilocanos in the north, and Pangasinense in the south settled the region. From the data on the popular distribution of Region 1, it is clear that not all the inhabitants are Ilocanos; around one-third are non-Ilocanos, and yet there is a popular misconception that all the inhabitants are Ilocanos. The use of the term Ilocos region promotes the wrong notion that all the residents of Region 1 are Ilocanos.
Biagi Lamang by Pedro Bucanig. The story of the life of Lamang is an exceptional piece that should be read by people of all cultures. Why? Because, first, this story is a mix of adventure and romance with exciting and unpredictable outcomes. Second, this story portrays the characteristics of an Ilocano. And the last, third, it is mirrors or reflects the culture of an Ilocano. The Avocado Tree by Marcelino Foronda Jr. This is a story about a young boy who chose a feminist life and was killed by his father, along with the avocado tree. This story depicts that we should accept whatever decisions our children make. We should also respect them in whoever and whatever they are.
Commonly known an Ilocano folk song. It is all about the man who fell in love to a beautiful lady who is stone-hearted. Bigong Pag-asa by Leona Florentino. This is a story about a person who loves someone that he is willing to die for his loved one, even though the one he loved doesn't feel the same way.
Region 2 Cagayan Valley, the land of smiling beauty has 5 provinces and 3 cities. The most dominant trait of region is the Cagayan River, the largest waterway in the Philippines. Cagayan Valley is considered as an adventurous paradise with its intricate cave system, Ridge Mountains Peak, whitewater rapids, and beautiful beaches.
Talaguerta, an Ibanag native song which also means in the garden. It talks about a man who expected for the lady's promise, which is to give him a flower. Or in short, the man is expecting to be loved also by the lady. Iyarig Taka. It is an Ibanag song which means I compare you. A story about a man courting a lady and he compared the lady. Biwag and Malana. It is a Cagayan epic that is about 2 men who fell in love with the same girl and fought for their love until the time that their braveness were tested. The lesson here is that we must use our power and authority that benefits the people around, especially to the politicians, that they may be play fair in the election.
Region 3, Central Luzon. It is a combination of towering mountains, extinct and active volcanoes, lost, virgin farmlands, and natural sea harbors. It is composed of Aurora, Bataan, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, Pampanga, Tarlac, and Zambales.
Miss Patupats by Juan Crisostomo Soto. Miss Patupats is a name describing a wide waste, a person who forgets to speak his own native language. The lesson here is that we must not forget who we were in the past.
Cordillera Administrative Region is a mountainous and more heavily populated area. Great majority of Cordillera's population are in the below poverty line that are engaged in farming and small-scale production. This majority are composed of closely related indigenous people, popularly known as the Igorots, but they are also grouped into ethnic or ethno-linguistic identities, such as Apayao or Isneg, Tingyan, Kalinga, Bondok, Kankanaey, Ibalaw, Ifugao, and
The Wedding Dance by Amador T. Daggio. This is a sad story of a man, Awiyao, who in spite of being in love with his wife Lumnay, feels the need to marry another in order to have a son. Because if a man does not have a son, he is considered to be inferior to others in their community, which some places are currently practicing it for the sake of their. The Giantes and the Three Children by Maria Luisa Aguilar Carino. This is a folktale which speaks about being selfish and greed. The lesson in here is that we should bear in mind that we must share whatever things we had, especially to those who is in need of it. Iyarig Taka. It is an Ibanag song which means I compare you. A story about a man courting a lady and he compared the lady into something.
Tagalog Region, the Philippine Republic's Region 4. Southern Tagalog comprised 11 provinces with 8 cities. Most of these provinces are in the southern part of the island of Luzon, but the province of Palawan archipelago itself stretches southwest of Luzon almost as far as Borneo, forming one of the four sides of Ludusi. This has subsequently been subdivided in Calabarzon and
Urbana at Felisa by Modesto de Castro. This story contains an advice of the ideal conduct and behavior expected of a middle class and a Christian family. Ang Kwento ni Mabuti by Genoveva Edrosa Matute. A story about a teacher who was called Mabuti by her students because of her expression which is Mabuti. As a future teachers, we must not let our students be affected because of our personal problems. Instead, let them feel that you are approachable and they can open their problems to you.
National Capital Region. The National Capital Region is the prime tourist destination in the Philippines. The metropolis in the Philippines, center of commerce, education, and entertainment. It is located on the islands of Luzon, bordered by the province of Bulacan in the north, Rizal on the east, Laguna in the south, and Manila Bay in the west. Though it is the smallest region in the country, Metro Manila has the highest population with almost 15 million inhabitants.
Footnote to the Youth by Jose Garcia Villa. It was a story of a boy who was only 17 when he decides to marry his loved one. This story tells us that we must think 100 times before we decide. We must be prepared for doing such decisions, especially in marriage. This is very crucial, so we must take this seriously in order for us not to regret someday. When I See a Barong Barong by Maximo Ramos. The poem depicts a strong sense of nationalism, showing a positive regard for one's fellow men during times of Great Depression. The image portrayed by the Barong Barong is a symbol of strength and honor. It tells the situation of many Filipinos that despite of poverty, they can still manage to smile, and also is still hoping for freedom and strength.
Region 5 Bicol Region, or Bicolandia, is one of the 16 regions of the Philippines, occupying the Bicol Peninsula of the southern of Luzon Island and some other islands. The Bicol region is often seen as the epicenter of the counterculture and liberal politics in the Philippines, as many of its inhabitants seem to oppose many right-wing governments and ideology in which they blame for corruption. The region has a political reputation of voting always for the opposition. It is also widely seen as a stronghold for the National Democratic Front.
To the Man I Married by Gloria Manalang. The poem is all about a woman who aims for an everlasting love. The woman's husband serves as her life. This story metaphorically portrays her love for her husband by comparing her need for him to her need for the earth. The Ignorant Poor Man and the Priest, a Bicol folktale. This story is about a man who went to church for the first time. The message of this story tells us that we must not put God on test. Instead, have faith on Him and your goals in life will be granted.
Visayas region. The history of Visayas is actually a prominent part of history of the Philippine Islands. In fact, these islands in the central part of the country have played prominent roles in the Philippines' past. The history of Visayas dates back to the 12th century, before the Spaniards were even aware of the existence of this part of the world. The earliest settlers of the islands were Austronesians and Negritos, who came to Panay and its surrounding islands. After neighboring empires had collapsed, trade in the islands flourished in 40th century as Arabs began venturing into the Malay archipelago, so that eventually Muslim communities were formed in the region. Visayas was the first region of the Philippines to come into contact with the Spaniards in the 6th.
Letter to Pedro, also called Pete, by Rene Estrella Ampere. Letter to Pedro is a story in which it tells us the practices of Filipinos. Pete here is symbolizes the entire Filipinos who wanted a greener pasture and left the country because of the problems that facing by Philippines. Muro Ami. This story is all about a fisherman who has endured more than his share of hardship in life. This story tells us that we must not take revenge to those people who hurt us. Instead, make them as an inspiration to pursue more life.
Literature of Mindanao. Muslims from Malaysia came to Mindanao in the 40th century through the southern islands, Jolo, Tawi-Tawi, and Basilan. This migration resulted to welding its small tribal units into several sultanates. Jolo, located into the southern tip of Mindanao, became the center of an extensive trading network from Java in the west to China in the north, and the Mindanao Sultanates were linked politically to Muslim states in the Borneo to the Moluccas. For many years, the Sultanate of Sulu ruled much of the Philippines and Borneo. These political and economic relations were believed to have continued even long after the arrival of the Spaniards in the 16th century. During this time, the Spaniards attempted but didn't achieve its goal to fully convert the Mindanao Muslims to Christianity. It started a Muslim region and stayed unchanged since then.
Mindanao, the origin of its name. This legend tells us on how Mindanao originated its name. The message of this legend is that we must possess the values such as the courage, patience, perseverance, and the likes in order for us to surpass and survive in certain problems we have. Durian legend. The story is about a king. Though he was powerful, he was helpless when it came to winning the love of his young bride. The message of this story is that we must not force someone in order for us to be loved. We must show to them that we are also deserving to their love and never give up. Sense of Apples by Bienvenido Santos. Due to the social and economical problems, many Filipinos are not given the chance to come back to their loved ones or family. Poverty is the hindrance why they don't have the chance to come back to the Philippines. This situation is experiencing by many Filipinos abroad. So, we must value our 21st century heroes, the OFWs.